I was born poor in the Rust Belt in an Ohio steel town that's been hemorrhaging jobs and hope for as long as I can remember. His name is J.D. Vance, and he grew up and wrote about a place about 10 miles north of where I grew up, Middletown, Ohio. His people and my people came from the same neck of the woods, eastern Kentucky. His grandfather and my father both moved to the industrial north to work in the factories, and there they found the semblance of middle-class respectability. But then the factories closed, and those hillbilly virtues of hard work and loyalty and honor and fierce patriotism gave way to family dysfunction and poverty and addiction to painkillers and heroin. My brother and sister still live near Vance's hometown. He called his hometown Middletucky, just like they call their little city Hamiltucky, Hamilton, Ohio. It's a place where more people die from drug overdoses than from old age. They're fiercely religious, but nobody goes to church anymore. You can't buy a job. And those who do have a job find it difficult to show up every day for work. Something happened, says Vance, to undermine the lives of those people. What happens, he wrote, when small-town, isolated, poor people give in to impoverishedness and lack of hope? He says there's a cognitive dissonance, a disconnect between the world as they live it and the values that they hold. I think all of us have a certain cognitive dissonance in our lives. We know smoking isn't good for us, but about 20% of Americans still do it. We think fast food's really unhealthy, but that doesn't stop us from lining up in the McDonald's drive-thru. Even religious people, I hear them say, I believe every word of the Bible. Even that part where Jesus says, sell everything you have and give it to the poor? Well, he didn't mean that literally. I remember a few years ago, George Sanders, an author and a professor, was given the commencement speech at Syracuse. And he asked the students, go find an old person and ask them, what do you regret? And then he told the students what he regretted. He said, do I regret being poor from time to time? Not really. Do I regret having to work as a knuckle puller in a slaughterhouse? Don't even ask what that entailed. Do I regret jumping into a river in Sumatra, naked, a little buzzed, swimming, looking up and seeing like 300 monkeys pooping into the water that I had been swimming in with my mouth open, and getting sick for 7 months after? No, he says, I don't regret that. Do I regret playing hockey in a big arena in front of a full house, in front of a girl I was really trying to impress, and then scoring a goal on my own goalie? He said, no, I don't regret that. What I regret are failures of kindness. Do you regret that? I regret that. I regret that when I was 13 years old, I rode the bus to junior high school. And there was a new girl that moved into our neighborhood. And you know where she was from? You're right, Kentucky. And maybe she had a bad complexion or she didn't wear the right clothes. There was something about her that just didn't sit well with her classmates. And every trip to school and every trip home was pure hell for her. She was abused and tormented every single trip. One spring day we were going home from school, and I remember she was wearing a blue navy coat. And when she got up out of her seat to get off the bus after being tormented again by her classmates, on the back of her coat there were white flecks. It was the spittle of her classmates. They spat upon her again and again. And me, this 13-year-old, I sat there and did nothing. That's a failure of kindness Professor Saunders says. It's when we hear someone who is in pain and we sit there respectably and mildly and do nothing, just like I did 48 years ago, just like I still regret doing even today. Well, I think there are three deeply theological answers to the question of why we are so unkind as human beings. The first answer is that we think we're the center of the universe and our story is the most important story in the world. The second answer is that we see the world around us and we see people and places and things, but we think we're separate from that. And the third answer is that we think we're going to live forever. And you know what? All three of those answers are flawed. We're not the center of the universe. We're not disconnected from the world around us. And we won't live forever. There's a place in the New Testament, Matthew's Gospel, chapter 5, and Jesus is talking. And he tells his disciples to do something incredibly difficult. He says, if someone strikes you on the right cheek, turn to them the left also. Of course, that passage has received a ton of ridicule. And usually we look at it with two options, that you can respond to a situation like that. You can respond to violence with violence, or you can respond to violence with submission, but that's not what he's talking about. I think he's talking about a creative, nonviolent attitude and response. You see, in Jesus' time, if somebody hits you on the right cheek, well, a right-handed person has to backhand a person to hit them on the right cheek, if you think about it. And that position, that's what a master does to a slave. That's what a superior does to an inferior. But Jesus says, turn the left cheek. And that means that person has to hit you like a man or a woman. That person has to hit you with their fist. They have to hit you as if you are equal to them, and your disobedience is making a statement. My friends, we can be kind, but we can live our kindness with justice. It's not cognitive dissonance. It seamlessly fits together, because what Jesus says and how we live our lives are supposed to fit together like that. You can be kind and you can be just. So how do you respond to people who are unjust to you? How do you respond to people who spit on you? People who, at least figuratively, would like to strike you on the right cheek? Be kind. Reach out to others, but be just. Stand up for truth and what's right. And that's not cognitive dissonance. That's a way of living our lives with faith.